Hello, this is Brother Teacher. I want to comment on a video that I saw here recently. And before I do that, let me preface this video by saying this. And this is in regards to the credibility of Bruce Lee as a martial artist and a great or very good martial artist, as it were. I think that it is without any doubt, in at least the majority of the world's viewpoint, that Bruce Lee was hands down the most celebrated martial artist of our time. This just simply goes without saying. The vast majority of the population that has watched Bruce Lee, that has grown up with Bruce Lee movies and Bruce Lee's teachings and so forth, they know that Bruce Lee was the real thing. One of many, of course, but he was the real McCoy. He was the real genuine deal as it relates to martial arts, especially the fighting aspect of martial arts and not the sport martial arts. But you find a group of people, throughout the martial arts community across the world that want to always berate, always demean the validity of Bruce Lee because it wasn't them, or people who actually were around him or even participated in some of the movie projects that Bruce Lee had, Enter the Dragon, Return of the Dragon, Chinese Connection, and so forth. They want to put the man's fighting ability down after he's been dead this many years. But they didn't do this when he was living. None of them stepped to Bruce Lee or stepped up to him and said, let's spar. Because why? I'll let you figure it out. He would have annihilated those individuals. And quietly, even though it's not being publicized from the major martial arts community that existed during that time, Bruce Lee did indeed prove his worthability, if you will, to those guys during those years. It's just not talked about openly. They know, they quietly know that Bruce Lee was the greater martial artist during those days. How do you say, for example, that you were the world champion heavyweight in sport karate, or the middleweight champion, or the lightweight champion? How do you say that when there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of other karate guys and champions out there as well? But Chuck Norris always, for example, liked to say he was the heavyweight champion or the middleweight champion, whatever the case was, of the world, 5-time world champion or whatever the case was. And he stick his chest out proudly and state this every time someone had a conversation with him about Bruce Lee. He would talk about, at that time I was the world champion. He always said that. So if you can believe Chuck Norris was the world champion, which he was in sports karate, why can't you believe that Bruce Lee was the greater martial artist outside of sports? Now, someone wants to continue to try to measure Bruce Lee and anyone else that doesn't participate in the sporting aspect of karate. They want to continue to measure you with that yardstick that only is applicable to sports karate or martial arts. Go figure. I know, for example, you would not have gun practice or self-defense practice with a loaded gun. You just wouldn't do it. You use something that resembles a gun, is close to a gun, when you have self-defense class for gun self-defense specifically. So you wouldn't bring the real gun to class loaded, because in fear of what? Someone is going to possibly be injured really bad or even killed. Now translate that or transfer that over to martial arts. Bruce Lee didn't participate in sports because he would have hurt somebody. That's why he was only practicing martial arts from a fighting standpoint and from a street standpoint, not from a sports standpoint. So if you want to fault him for not studying the sporting aspect of martial arts and winning trophies, go right ahead. But we all know the truth. We really know the truth. Most of those guys 99% of them guys, once Bruce Lee had stepped in the ring, either in point karate or even continuous or even kickboxing, Bruce Lee would have dominated them. But he didn't want to do that. He didn't want to participate in that because it was not true to who he was. He only studied real fighting. Didn't need a referee. Didn't need a scorekeeper or a timekeeper. He just studied martial arts. And it is indicative in all of his writings. It's indicative in his conversations, in his interviews, that he was studying martial arts from a fighting standpoint. So why do you keep comparing him to sports karate figures? Chuck Norris, Joe Louis, Bob Wall, Mike, whoever. I can't think of his name right now. But anyway, Mike Stone, and all of these other various people in sport karate, which were great athletes, great martial artists. I'm not putting them down. I'm not. But stop putting Bruce Lee down as not being a credible martial artist when he was better than all of you. He really was. Now, God rest Joe Louis's soul. He's gone now. But I saw, this is the video that I was talking about early on. I saw a video where he was talking to Bob Wall, who starred in, co-starred in Enter the Dragon with Bruce Lee as O'Hara, and also in Return of the Dragon with Bruce Lee. I saw them talking to one another, even though there's some distortion in the video clip, and I wondered if it was intentional. But actually, they're trying to find flaws, especially Joe Louis, trying to find flaws in Bruce Lee's kicking, his attacking, his stance, and the fact that he was wearing Chinese shoes. And there was even a statement made by Joe Louis that, oh, we can't have this karate guy, destroying a legend as Bruce Lee, and he hasn't made a name for himself yet. He was talking about Bob Wall. Come on now. Let's get real. Let's be serious. Bob Wall was not on the level of Bruce Lee. Joe Louis was nowhere on the level of Bruce Lee. Chuck Norris was nowhere on the level of Bruce Lee. He exceeded them all. Because if he didn't exceed them all, why didn't they all prove it during the time that he was living? Why all of these years later, 20, 30, 40 years later, now you want to talk about, I could have beat Bruce Lee and Bruce Lee wasn't that good, and he lacked this and so on. We all know the truth. The world knows the truth. But anyway, I had to make this video because I saw this so-called rare video of Bob Wall and Joe Louis talking, and it seems like Joe Louis was the more dominant person in the conversation, trying to pick out flaws in Bruce Lee's fighting. But later years, he started saying things like, well, he was fast and he was a fanatic in Jeet Kune Do, and Jeet Kune Do that he taught me, which Bruce Lee did teach Joe Louis some Jeet Kune Do. He said the Jeet Kune Do that he taught him helped him become the champion, the karate champion in kickboxing. Now, kudos to Joe Louis for that. But my point still is the same, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm not going to change this. Even though people have an interview and they speak in a positive manner about Bruce Lee, but it does not negate all of the other negative things that they've said in previous videos or even in latter videos. It doesn't matter. So make the comparison, make the contrast, watch all of the videos and get the gist of what's being said instead of the fluff, instead of the people pretending that oh, Bruce Lee was beneficial to me and so on and so forth, because you just want a nice pleasant talking point, or it's just being done simply from a media standpoint or from a publicity standpoint, or you stand to gain something by speaking positive about the man, especially now. Even when Steven Seagal said something about Bruce Lee, it is said that Bob Wall made a statement in the media saying, well, I'll kill you if you're saying something negative about my Shifu or about my teacher, Bruce Lee. For real, how serious was Bob Wall about Bruce Lee being someone that he looked up to? I'm not saying that he didn't look up to Bruce Lee, but I am still saying that, excuse me, and some people want to think I'm changing, but I'm not. No one ever in America, in white supremacist America, ever wanted an Asian to be the most popular superstar in America. If you go back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, you'll see that they always made fun of Asians and even blacks. So it couldn't be a black hero. It couldn't have been an Asian hero. And they're just jealous because Bruce Lee was the martial arts hero of his time. And he just happened to be Chinese and not white. I'm sorry. That's it. And that's all. They need to stop talking about Bruce Lee not being a credible martial artist, because he was, still is, the greatest martial artist known to all of us during his time. Not saying, and I've said this before, I'm qualifying this statement, there were many great martial arts masters before Bruce Lee and even after Bruce Lee, and even during the time that he lived, but they did not surface. Bruce Lee just happened to be the one that did surface. And so by him doing that, he garnered the position of the greatest martial artist of this time.